A July afternoon in 1916, an 11-year-old boy plays in a muddy creek 10 miles from the nearest beach. Suddenly, something grabs him from beneath the water and drags him to the bottom. His friends, naked and covered in mud, run screaming down the town's main street. Nobody believes them. In just 12 days, 5 people would be attacked along the coast of New Jersey. 4 would die. And the question that paralyzed half a nation was this: what kind of creature could kill in the open sea, then swim up a freshwater creek to keep hunting humans? Because when they finally caught the beast, what they found inside it was stranger than anyone had imagined. Let's go back to the beginning. The summer of 1916 was one of the hottest on record. The attacks happened during a deadly heat wave and a polio epidemic that pushed thousands of people toward the seaside resorts of the New Jersey coast. People fled the heat and the fear of infection, searching for the relief of the ocean. No one suspected that the danger was in the water itself. On July the 1st, in the resort town of Beach Haven, a young man decided to take a swim before dinner. Charles Epting Van Sant, 23 years old and from Philadelphia, was on vacation at the Ingleside Hotel with his family. Before dinner, he went for a quick swim in the Atlantic, beside a dog playing on the beach. Soon after entering the water, Van Sant began to scream. Swimmers thought he was calling the dog. In reality, a shark was biting into his legs. He was rescued by lifeguard Alexander Ott and bystander Sheridan Taylor, who both swore the shark followed him all the way to shore as they dragged Van Sant, bleeding from the water. It was too late. Van Sant bled to death on the desk of the Ingleside Hotel manager at 6:45 that evening. His death was the first recorded fatal shark attack on the east coast of the United States. And here is where the story turns unsettling. Because nobody did anything. Despite the horrific nature of Van Sant's death, local authorities declared that swimmers had nothing to fear, even as some fishermen claimed they'd spotted sharks off the coast. At the time, people simply didn't believe a shark could kill a human being off the northeast coast. To the science of the day, it was almost impossible. For an entire week, it looked like a one-off accident, a freak event that would never repeat. But they were wrong, because the worst was still to come. On July 6th, 28 miles north, at the resort of Spring Lake, a young Swiss immigrant was swimming far from shore. The victim was Charles Bruder, 27, a bell captain at the Essex and Sussex Hotel. He was attacked while swimming about 400 feet out. What happened was brutal and fast. A shark bit into his abdomen and severed his legs. Bruder's blood turned the water red. Lifeguards rowed out and pulled him in, but it was too late. He died on the way to shore. 2 deaths in 5 days. Now the panic was real. Tourists cancelled their reservations. Some hotels installed steel nets in the water to create safe zones. The entire coast lived with its heart in its throat. But look closely, both attacks had happened in open water in the Atlantic. What came next made no sense at all, and it's the part of this story that still raises the hairs on your neck. On July 12th, the horror moved inland, to Matawan. Sitting about 30 miles north of Spring Lake and inland from Raritan Bay, Matawan looked more like an inland town than an Atlantic resort, which made it an unlikely place for an encounter between sharks and people. We're talking about a creek, murky, brackish water 10 miles from the sea, a place where, according to everything science knew at the time, a great marine predator could never appear. That morning, one man saw it. When Thomas Cottrell, a sea captain and Matawan local, spotted a shark about 8 feet long in the creek, the town ignored him. They laughed at him. A shark 10 miles inland in a creek? Impossible. A few hours later, a group of boys went in to swim and escape the heat. Around 2 in the afternoon, a group of town boys, among them little Lester Stillwell, 11 years old, were playing together in the creek. Then it happened. Something enormous rose out of the murky water and seized Lester in front of his friends, dragging him below the surface. The boys ran into town, terrified, screaming that a shark had taken their friend. And again, disbelief. People were skeptical. They assumed Stillwell, who was epileptic, had simply drowned. A group of neighbors ran to the creek, among them a young man determined to recover the boy's body. And here the tragedy folds in on itself. 24-year-old Stanley Fisher dove into the water to find the boy. Almost instantly, he was bitten in the leg. He died that same night in the hospital. They say his last words were that he had done his duty, but the beast wasn't finished. Half an hour later, a third of a mile upstream, it attacked one final time. Joseph Dunn, 14 years old, would be the fifth and last victim, and the only one to survive. The shark bit into his left leg, tearing away the flesh, but Dunn was pulled free after a savage struggle with the animal. 5 people attacked, 4 dead, and an entire nation asking the same thing. How could a shark kill in the ocean, then swim up a freshwater creek? The panic reached the White House. President Woodrow Wilson called a cabinet meeting to address the incidents. The attack set off what was described as the largest animal hunt in history. And here we reach the answer, or almost. 2 days after the horror at Matawan, a man was fishing in Raritan Bay, near the mouth of the creek. On July 14th, a Harlem taxidermist and lion tamer named Michael Schleiser caught a shark measuring 7.5 feet and weighing 325 pounds while fishing in Raritan Bay, just a few miles from the mouth of Matawan Creek. The shark nearly capsized his boat before Schleiser killed it with a broken oar. What he found when he opened it changed everything. Cutting into the animal's belly, he found remains that filled about 2/3 of a milk crate and weighed roughly 15 pounds. Scientists identified the shark as a young great white and confirmed that the remains it had swallowed were human. After that catch, the attacks stopped completely. No one was ever attacked again that summer. So mystery solved? Not entirely. And here's the final chill that's still alive a century later. Experts still argue over which species was responsible. On one hand, the shark caught with human remains was a young great white. On the other, there's one detail that doesn't fit. The Matawan attack happened in a brackish creek, inland. And the great white rarely ventures into fresh water. There's a theory that the culprit was a bull shark, the only species able to survive in both salt and fresh water. It's the perfect creature to explain how something could hunt at sea, then swim up a creek. And yet, while Matawan Creek suggests fresh or brackish water, a habitat bull sharks favor and great whites avoid, an examination of the site revealed that its size, depth, and salinity were closer to a sea inlet, and that a small great white could easily have made its way in. And since a great white of the right size, with human remains in its stomach, was caught nearby shortly after the attacks, and there were no further incidents, it seems likely that this was the shark involved, at least in the Matawan deaths. A century later, science is still divided. A single lost great white that hunted in the sea and swam up an inlet. Or a bull shark, the only one able to move through fresh water that was never caught. The only certainty is what remained. 4 dead, a summer of terror, and a quiet creek where, one July afternoon, something rose from the murky bottom to take an 11-year-old boy. And we still don't know for certain what it was.